everyone, it's time for us to take a look at the iPad Air 4th generation and see how this particular iPad holds up in 2025. Now, the thing I will definitely tell you, in my personal opinion, is that the iPad Air 4th generation still is in a lot of ways a very, very decent type of iPad. Because this thing is significantly older now, it in a lot of ways probably isn't the first iPad I'd recommend buying anymore, but it is still up there as being a pretty good value. And I do think for a lot of people out there, it still might be a pretty decent iPad when it comes down to it. So let's go and see how this particular iPad holds up in 2025. If you want to go ahead and pick up this particular iPad though, or some other iPads I personally would recommend buying this year, links will be down in the description below. You can get that from there and you can help support the channel at the exact same time. Now, starting off with the outside of the iPad Air 4th generation, this particular iPad came out back in 2020. So you kind of have to keep that in mind. This is a little bit of an older type of iPad. It's like approaching 5 years old this year, which is a pretty long time ago when it kind of comes down to it from that standpoint. Now, this iPad on the front side is giving you a 10.9-inch Liquid Retina IPS LCD panel. And that right there is actually not that bad of a panel to have inside of an iPad. I think it is a very good type of iPad, at least a good type of display to have. So that right there, you're definitely going to be getting like a really good type of experience, in my personal opinion, in this type of iPad from that standpoint. Now, it's 500 nits of brightness, so it isn't like the nicest type of display of all time. But I would say for the most part, this is going to be one of those types of iPads that still is going to look pretty good for the most part. Yes, it's not going to be the best looking iPad of all time, but I would imagine if you are going to go through and pick up an iPad, this thing looks pretty much similar in terms of the design as compared to something like maybe like an iPad, M6 model, that, iPad Air M6, for example. So in terms of that kind of covers it up from that particular standpoint. Now, some other big things to keep in mind. This iPad is giving you USB Type-C at the bottom, which is always very nice to have. I love USB-C, and you are essentially going to be getting that inside of this type of iPad, which is really nice to have. You're also going to be getting these flat sides on this iPad. Now, the reason why I mention that is because within this type of iPad, that also means that you're going to be able to go through and basically pick up your Apple Pencil 2. So you're able to go through and pick up Apple Pencil 2 inside of this type of device as well, which once again, that in and of itself is another very nice thing to have inside of a particular iPhone as well. So being able to go through and pick up, Apple Pencil 2 and be able to use it inside of this device, it's a very nice thing to have. I'm a big fan of it, and you're definitely going to be experiencing that inside of this type of device when it comes down to it from that standpoint as well. Now on the back side, you're getting basically like a flat back as well, which is expected. You're getting a single camera setup on the back side as well, which is always very nice to have. And beyond that, there's not anything else like super crazy that we haven't already experienced. These types of devices already do a pretty good job at, kind of giving you good types of experience and good types of things for the most part that you'd probably expect. So I would imagine within this type of device, these types of phones still give you like a pretty good type of experience. But, or these types of iPads give you a good type of experience. Now, they're not necessarily like the best, most popular thing anymore, but I would say the design of this iPad still holds up very well. It still is a very nice iPad from that standpoint, and you don't really have too many things to complain about here from this type of device when it comes down to it. So from that standpoint, that kind of covers it up there a little bit as well. Now, on top of that, when it comes down to its price tag, this type of device costs hundreds of dollars cheaper than what it used to cost. So that right there, I think, is a very big thing to keep in mind there as well, because you're able to go through and pick up an iPad that doesn't cost as much money as it used to. So I would imagine that going through and buying an iPad like this, it's going to be giving you like a pretty decent experience from that standpoint as well. And I would definitely tell you, if I'm going to go through and pick up an iPad, I definitely do like the ability of going through and picking up an iPad that's going to be giving me a much cheaper type of experience from that side as well. So from that standpoint, that's another really cool thing going on here as well. Now, on top of that, another important thing to keep in mind here too is the fact that within these types of iPads, you're also going to be able to go through and get that camera. Now, the camera inside of this thing, it's a 12 megapixel wide angle camera on the back and a 7 megapixel camera on the front side. So this type of camera does give you a pretty good experience from that particular standpoint. Again, it isn't necessarily like the best type of experience of all time, but for a 2020 iPad, it really wasn't too terrible. So its 12 megapixel sensor on the back can give you 4K at 60, which I do think is actually something that's really, really nice to have. With the iPad, Air 4 front camera, it's also giving you a 7 megapixel front facing camera. So that one is going to be able to give you 1080p at 60 frames per second on the front side. And for the most part, that type of camera, it does give you like a good type of experience. Again, maybe it isn't necessarily like the best type of camera of all time, but for an average day in your life type of camera, I think it'll get the job done. And I do think these types of cameras do kind of give you an okay experience to kind of go through and kind of use on an everyday basis. So if you had to use it like in a pinch or something, this thing would be good enough for you. And I do think that would be another nice thing to kind of keep in mind there for that type of camera as well. So from that standpoint, that kind of covers it up there. Now, on top of that, when it kind of comes down to its software longevity, this is another one of those problems that you might run into. With something like the iPad Air 4, this type of iPad is basically, still getting software updates. Right now, it started off with iPadOS 14. It's on iPadOS 18. It's getting iPadOS 26. And it's probably going to last a little bit longer than that. But if you wanted an iPad that's going to be lasting you like the longest amount of time, there might be some other devices out there that might be better than these ones. So if you want to look at like an M1 iPad Air or an M2, like M6, whatever the ones available now, those ones clearly are going to be giving you the overall better type of experience. So that right there could be one of those big things to keep in mind there. Is it the biggest deal in the world? I'm not really too sure. But that is going to be, at the end of the day, another one of those very large things to keep in mind there. In terms of performance, this iPad is going to be giving you the Apple A14 Bionic chip inside with 4 gigabytes of RAM. So this type of iPad's performance really isn't that bad either. Like, this iPad is going to be giving you a really good type of experience when it does actually come down to the performance capability. So it's about the same speed as something like an iPhone 12-ish, so if you have like an iPhone 12, it's going to be roughly around the same type of performance as that one. So I do think from that side too, that is kind of a nice thing. Being able to go through and pick up a device like this that's going to be giving you that type of capability, I do think is a very nice thing. Again, it isn't necessarily perfect, but I would say for the most part, it gets the job done. And that's one of those things. For basic applications, even for more intense ones, with 4 gigabytes of RAM, that still is like a decent amount of RAM to have inside of a device as well. So it's not terrible, but just know that it isn't competing, that well against the current generation iPad Pros with like 12 to 16 gigabytes of RAM with like 120 Hz displays. So from that side, that kind of covers it up there as well. So overall, what I can definitely tell you is that, in my personal opinion, I do think there are way better types of iPads and way better types of devices to go and pick up rather than this one, right? But I think this one is a good middle ground. These types of iPads are basically going to be able to give you a good, solid experience that's not going to break the bank. That's not necessarily going to be like super crazy, expensive. And I think for a majority of people's use cases, you might be able to go through and get like a pretty good type of experience from it. With that being said, I do think these types of devices, they're going to be, good. They're going to be able to get the job done. But like I said, I don't know if this would be the first one I'd recommend. I think this would be like the second or third one. Get an M1 iPad Air in the used market, get a used like iPad Pro, and then maybe get this one if those ones are too expensive or something like that. So in terms of that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that'll mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.